In the small, quiet town of Pine Ridge, life moved at a slow and predictable pace. People woke up early, worked hard during the day, and gathered around dinner tables in the evening to talk about their ordinary lives. It was a place where nothing exciting ever happened, or so everyone thought. But for one boy named Ethan Parker, Pine Ridge wasn't just another sleepy corner of the world. It was the starting point of something extraordinary. Ethan had always been different from the other kids. While his classmates spent afternoons playing soccer or racing bikes down dusty trails, Ethan preferred to sit alone on the roof of his house, gazing through an old telescope he'd found in his grandfather's attic. He would spend hours staring at the stars, sketching strange designs in a worn-out notebook that no one else was allowed to see. To him, the night sky wasn't just a collection of twinkling lights. It was alive, full of secrets waiting to be uncovered. But being different came with a price. From the moment Ethan started school, he became a target for bullies. They called him names like Space Boy and Alien Freak, mocking his fascination with outer space. During recess, they would snatch his notebook and flip through its pages, laughing at the drawings of spaceships and alien creatures that filled every blank spot. Teachers often dismissed his passion as childish imagination, telling him to focus on more practical things. Even his parents sometimes shook their heads, worried that their son's obsession with the cosmos might make him miss out on real-life experiences. Despite all this, Ethan never stopped believing in what he saw when he looked at the stars. Deep inside, he felt certain that there was something beyond Earth, something incredible, something important. And then, one fateful night, everything changed. It happened on a chilly autumn evening when Ethan snuck out of the house after everyone else had gone to bed. His parents didn't approve of his late-night stargazing sessions, but Ethan couldn't stay away. There was something magical about the way the stars seemed brighter when the rest of the world was asleep. That night, however, the sky held more than just constellations. As Ethan adjusted his telescope, he noticed something unusual, a faint glow near the edge of the horizon. At first, he thought it might be a meteor shower, or maybe even the northern lights making an unexpected appearance. But as he focused the lens, the glow grew stronger, pulsating with a rhythm almost like breathing. Curiosity got the better of him. Grabbing a flashlight and pulling on his jacket, Ethan ventured into the nearby woods, following the direction of the mysterious light. The air was crisp and leaves crunched underfoot as he made his way deeper into the forest. Finally, he reached a clearing where the source of the glow stood waiting, an object unlike anything he'd ever seen before. The orb hovered silently above the ground, radiating soft hues of blue, green, and gold. It was about the size of a basketball, but it didn't look solid. Instead, it shimmered and shifted as if it were alive. Ethan froze, heart pounding in his chest. Part of him wanted to run back home and pretend none of this had happened. But another part, the part that had always believed in the possibility of something greater, urged him forward. Hesitantly, he stepped closer. The orb responded immediately, floating toward him until it hovered directly in front of his face. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, without warning, it emitted a low hum that resonated through Ethan's entire body. Words began forming in his mind, not spoken aloud but somehow understood. They weren't in any language he recognized, yet their meaning was clear. "You are chosen," the voice said. "Prepare." Before Ethan could react, the orb extended a tendril of light, brushing gently against his forehead. A surge of energy coursed through him, overwhelming his senses. Images flooded his brain, blueprints of massive ships, symbols of unknown languages, maps of distant galaxies. Pain mixed with wonder as his mind struggled to process the influx of information. When the connection broke, Ethan collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath. By the time he managed to stagger back home, dawn was breaking over Pine Ridge. Exhausted and disoriented, Ethan fell into bed, clutching his throbbing head. Over the next few days, fragments of what he'd experienced replayed in his mind. At first, he tried to convince himself it had been a dream, a vivid hallucination, brought on by too much time spent staring at the stars. But deep down, he knew better. The orb had been real, and so was the message it carried. What Ethan didn't realize yet was how profoundly that encounter would change not only his own life, but the fate of the entire planet. For now, though, he kept his secret hidden, burying himself in his sketches and calculations, while trying to ignore the growing whispers in his head. Little did he know those whispers were warnings. Warnings of a future that would soon come crashing down upon humanity in ways no one could have imagined. Meanwhile, life in Pine Ridge continued as usual. Neighbors greeted each other warmly. On the street, shopkeepers opened their stores each morning, and children played outside until the sun dipped below the horizon. No one suspected that high above them, forces beyond their understanding were already gathering. The stars, once silent witnesses to human existence, were about to reveal a truth that would shatter everything people thought they knew about their place in the universe. As weeks turned into months, Ethan grew quieter, withdrawing further into his own world. His classmates still teased him mercilessly, unaware of the burden he carried. Yet beneath his calm exterior, Ethan's mind raced with questions. What did the orb mean by chosen? Why had it shown him visions of alien technology? Most importantly, why did he feel an inexplicable sense of urgency whenever he looked at the sky? One evening, as Ethan sat on the roof with his telescope, he noticed something strange. A cluster of stars that had always been visible now appeared dimmer, almost as if they were fading away. At first, he chalked it up to atmospheric conditions, or faulty equipment. But the next night, the phenomenon repeated itself, and this time, it was accompanied by a faint vibration in the air, like the hum of a distant engine. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Whatever was coming, it was close. Closer than anyone realized. For weeks after his encounter with the orb, Ethan Parker tried to act normal. He went to school, did his homework, and avoided drawing attention to himself as much as possible. But inside, he was anything but calm. The visions in his head grew, stronger, more vivid, until they felt like memories of places he'd never been. Blueprints for machines that defied logic danced across his mind's eye, while strange symbols burned themselves into his thoughts. Every time he looked at the stars, he felt a pull, a call, that made it hard to focus on anything else. His classmates didn't notice the change in him. To them, Ethan was still just Space Boy, the weird kid who talked about aliens and drew pictures of spaceships instead of playing football. They teased him relentlessly, calling out fake alien noises whenever he walked by or snatching his notebook to laugh at the sketches inside. Teachers sighed when he raised his hand to ask questions about astronomy or physics, brushing off his curiosity as daydreaming. Even his parents seemed concerned, though they tried to hide it. His mom often asked if he was feeling okay, while his dad muttered under his breath about Ethan needing to get his head out of the clouds. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming, something that would change everything. The stars continued to dim, their light fading night after night. And then there were the vibrations. At first they were faint, almost imperceptible, but over time they grew louder, resonating deep within his chest like the hum of an engine, warming up. It wasn't painful exactly, but it was unsettling, a constant reminder that whatever the orb had warned him about was getting closer. One crisp autumn morning, Pine Ridge woke up to what sounded like thunder, but it wasn't raining. The ground trembled slightly and birds scattered from trees as a low rumble echoed through the air. People stepped outside, squinting toward the sky, trying to figure out where the noise was coming from. That's when it happened. A jagged crack appeared high above the town, splitting the blue expanse like a piece of torn fabric. For a moment, nothing moved. Then, slowly, the edges of the tear began to widen, revealing not clouds or sunlight, but something metallic and massive beyond. Gasps rippled through the crowd as enormous shapes emerged from the rift, ships unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. Their surfaces gleamed silver and black, etched with intricate patterns that pulsed faintly with light. They hovered silently, casting long shadows over the landscape below. Panic erupted almost instantly. Parents grabbed their children and ran, back indoors, slamming doors shut behind them. Cars screeched down streets as drivers sped away from the eerie sight. Phones buzzed furiously as people called loved ones, news outlets, anyone who might explain what was happening. Social media exploded with videos and photos of the ships, accompanied by frantic captions. Are we being invaded? They're what? Do they want? Is this the end of the world? Ethan stood frozen in his front yard, staring up at the ships with wide eyes. Unlike everyone else, he wasn't afraid. In fact, he felt vindicated. All those years of ridicule, all the times he'd been dismissed as crazy for talking about aliens, it had all led to this moment. The orb had been right. The stars had been trying to tell him something, and now the proof was hovering directly above his hometown. As chaos unfolded around him, Ethan's mind raced. He recognized the designs of the ships. They matched the blueprints the orb had shown him. These weren't random invaders. They were the Vorthax, the civilization he'd glimpsed in his visions. But why were they here? What did they want? More importantly, how could he communicate with them? While most of Pine Ridge cowered indoors, Ethan decided to take action. He ran back into his house, ignoring his mother's panicked shouts, and grabbed the battered notebook filled with his sketches. Flipping through its pages, he found one particular diagram that stood out, a device capable of translating alien languages. It had come to him in fragments after the orb's visit, pieced together bit by bit over months of sleepless nights. Now it was time to put it to use. Working quickly, Ethan gathered scraps of metal, wires, and spare parts from his garage. His hands trembled with excitement as he assembled the crude translator, following the design etched into his memory. By sundown, he held a small, boxy contraption in his hands. It looked like something cobbled together from a junkyard, but Ethan knew it was his best chance at understanding the beings in the sky. That night, under the cover of darkness, Ethan ventured into the woods again. This time he carried the translator with him, along with a flashlight and a sense of purpose. Standing in the same clearing where he'd encountered the orb, he aimed the device toward the largest ship hanging ominously overhead. Taking a deep breath, he pressed the activation button. At first, nothing happened. Ethan's heart sank. Had he misunderstood the designs? Was the translator useless? Just as doubt began creeping in, a beam of light shot out from the device, connecting with the ship above. A low hum filled the air, growing louder and more complex by the second. Suddenly, a holographic projection materialized before him, a towering figure with elongated limbs and shimmering, iridescent skin. The alien tilted its head, studying Ethan curiously. Its mouth didn't move, but words formed in Ethan's mind, translated by the device. "You are human?" "Yes," Ethan replied, his voice trembling. "I'm Ethan Parker." The creature paused, its luminous eyes narrowing slightly. "You understand us?" I think so," Ethan stammered. "I've been seeing things, visions, your ships, your language. I don't know how, but I know you're not here to hurt us." The alien hesitated, then nodded slowly. "We are Vorthax, refugees fleeing destruction. The portal, we created it to escape, but we cannot hold it forever." Ethan's stomach churned. So the orb hadn't lied. The Vorthax weren't invaders. They were running from something far worse, something that could destroy entire civilizations. Before he could ask more questions, the projection flickered and disappeared, leaving him alone in the clearing once again. When Ethan returned home, his mind was spinning. He wanted to share what he'd learned, to warn people about the danger lurking beyond the portal. But how could he convince anyone? Who would believe a teenager claiming to have spoken with aliens? Word of Ethan's late-night excursion spread quickly. Neighbors reported seeing strange lights flashing in the woods, and rumors began circulating about the boy who talked to aliens. Reporters descended on Pine Ridge, eager to uncover the truth behind the mysterious ships. At first, many dismissed Ethan as a hoaxer or a conspiracy theorist, but satellite images soon confirmed the existence of a monstrous entity lurking just beyond the dimensional rift, the Voidborn, a hive-like force capable of consuming planets whole. Faced with undeniable evidence, Governments around the world scrambled to respond. Emergency summits were held, military forces mobilized, and scientists worked tirelessly to analyze data provided by Ethan's translator. Public opinion shifted dramatically as people realized the boy they'd mocked for years might actually be their only hope of survival. Despite the newfound respect, Ethan faced immense pressure. Government officials demanded access to his technology, offering promises of funding and protection in exchange for cooperation. Private corporations bombarded him with lucrative offers, hoping to buy exclusive rights to the translator. Protesters gathered outside his house, accusing him of prioritizing alien interests over humanity's safety. Amidst the chaos, Ethan struggled to stay focused on the bigger picture. He knew the Vorthax needed help. Maintaining the portal required draining Earth's resources, which meant the planet would eventually become barren if nothing changed. Determined to find a solution, Ethan collaborated with a team of scientists to refine the translator into a universal communication tool. Through these efforts, humanity established direct contact with the Vorthax, learning valuable lessons about survival in a hostile universe. The Vorthax shared advanced technologies in sustainable energy, medicine, and defense systems, all crucial tools for combating the void-born threat. In return, Earth provided raw materials and manpower to reinforce the portal. Slowly but surely, a fragile alliance formed between humans and aliens, united against a common enemy. Yet even as hope began to take root, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was still to come. The Void-born loomed just beyond the rift, waiting patiently for their chance to strike. And when they did, Ethan feared the cost of victory might be higher than anyone was prepared to pay. As days turned into weeks, Ethan poured every ounce of energy into preparing for the inevitable. He studied the translator's readings obsessively, searching for weaknesses in the Void-born's defenses. Late at night, he sketched plans for weapons and strategies, knowing that one misstep could doom both Earth and the Vorthax. Meanwhile, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Some humans resented the sacrifices being made for the aliens, questioning whether Earth should risk its future for strangers from another galaxy. Others argued that fighting the Void-born was futile and advocated for surrender instead. Caught in the middle, Ethan fought to maintain unity, reminding everyone that survival depended on cooperation. Unbeknownst to the rest of the world, however, Ethan harbored a secret, one that weighed heavily on his conscience. The orb's warning had been clear. Sealing the rift permanently would require a sacrifice. Someone would. The days that followed Ethan Parker's first contact with the Vorthax were a whirlwind of activity. News of his encounter spread like wildfire, and Pine Ridge transformed overnight from a sleepy town into the epicenter of global attention. Reporters camped outside Ethan's modest home, their cameras flashing constantly as they tried to capture glimpses of the boy who had spoken directly to aliens. Helicopters buzzed overhead, while military convoys rolled into town, setting up temporary command centers in nearby fields. For a place that prided itself on quiet routines, life suddenly felt chaotic and dangerous. Ethan, however, had little time to process the changes around him. His translator device became humanity's lifeline, allowing scientists and diplomats to communicate with the Vorthax. Through these conversations, people learned more about the alien refugees' plight. The Vorthax weren't invaders. They were survivors fleeing an unimaginable threat, the Void-born. These parasitic beings consumed entire planets, leaving nothing but desolation in their wake. The dimensional rift above Earth wasn't just a gateway for the Vorthax, it was also a seal holding back the Void-born. But maintaining the barrier came at a cost. The energy required to sustain it drained Earth's resources, threatening to leave the planet barren within months if no alternative solution was found. As the gravity of the situation sank in, governments worldwide convened emergency summits to address the crisis. At first, there was skepticism. Some leaders dismissed the Vorthax's warnings as manipulation, accusing them of using fear tactics to exploit Earth's resources. Others worried about the implications of collaborating with an alien species, fearing it might lead to unforeseen consequences. Tensions ran high, with debates often devolving into shouting matches between factions advocating different approaches. Some pushed for immediate military action against the Voidborn, while others urged caution, emphasizing diplomacy for conflict. Amidst this turmoil, Ethan emerged as an unlikely mediator. Though only 17 years old, he possessed knowledge no one else did. The visions implanted in his mind by the orb served as a blueprint for understanding both the Vorthax and their enemies. With the help of a team of scientists, he refined the translator device into a universal communication tool capable of handling complex exchanges. This breakthrough allowed humans and Vorthax to share critical information, laying the foundation for what would become a fragile but vital alliance. Through these interactions, humanity gained access to groundbreaking technologies. The Vorthax shared advancements in sustainable energy systems, which could potentially reverse the environmental damage caused by maintaining the rift. They also provided medical treatments capable of curing diseases previously thought incurable, as well as defensive weaponry designed to repel Voidborn attacks. In return, Earth supplied raw materials and manpower to reinforce the portal, ensuring the barrier remained intact until a permanent solution could be devised. Despite these strides, not everyone welcomed the partnership. Skepticism lingered among certain groups fueled by conspiracy theories and misinformation. Protesters gathered outside government buildings and research facilities, chanting slogans like "Save Earth First" and demanding that authorities prioritize human needs over alien interests. Meanwhile, private corporations sought to exploit the situation for profit, offering exorbitant sums to buy exclusive rights to Vorthax technology. Ethan found himself caught in the crossfire, torn between protecting the Alliance and navigating the ethical dilemmas posed by those seeking to capitalize on the crisis. One particularly tense evening, Ethan sat in a makeshift laboratory set up inside a converted warehouse on the outskirts of Pine Ridge. Around him, scientists worked tirelessly, analyzing data streams from the translator and running simulations to predict potential outcomes. The air buzzed with urgency, punctuated by the hum of equipment and the occasional murmur of conversation. Ethan stared at a holographic projection of the rift, its jagged edges pulsing faintly with light. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. "Ethan," called Dr. Maria Alvarez, the lead scientist overseeing the project, "we need your input on this." She gestured toward a screen displaying a series of equations and diagrams. It was part of a proposal to redirect Earth's geothermal energy reserves to stabilize the rift temporarily. While promising, the plan carried significant risks, including the possibility of triggering earthquakes or volcanic eruptions in affected regions. "What happens if we don't do it?" Ethan asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "We lose the barrier entirely," Dr. Alvarez replied bluntly. "If that happens, the Voidborn will breach the rift, and there won't be anything standing between them and us." Ethan nodded, slowly, absorbing the weight of her words. Every decision felt like walking a tightrope, balancing short-term survival against long-term consequences. As much as he wanted to trust the Vorthax, he couldn't ignore the growing unease gnawing at the edges of his mind. What if they were hiding something? What if sealing the rift permanently meant sacrificing Earth altogether? Before he could dwell further on these doubts, the door burst open and a young soldier rushed in, breathless. "Sir, you need to see this," he said, handing Ethan a tablet displaying live footage from orbiting satellites. On the screen, dark shapes swarmed near the edge of the rift, their insectoid forms writhing with unnatural speed. "The Voidborn," Ethan whispered, his stomach sinking. "They're testing the barrier," the soldier confirmed grimly. "Our sensors indicate increased activity. It's only a matter of time before they break through." Panic rippled through the room as the scientists exchanged alarmed glances. Ethan clenched his fists, forcing himself to stay calm. Now was not the time to falter. Turning to Dr. Alvarez, he said, "We need to accelerate our plans. If the Voidborn breach the rift, we'll lose everything." Over the next few days, Ethan threw himself into work, barely sleeping as he collaborated with the Vorthax to develop countermeasures. Using the translator, he relayed strategies suggested by the aliens, adapting them to fit Earth's capabilities. One idea involved deploying electromagnetic pulses to disrupt the Voidborn's advance, buying precious time to reinforce the barrier. Another focused on creating decoy targets to draw the creatures away from populated areas. But even as progress was made, cracks began forming within the alliance. Some military officials argued that relying too heavily on Vorthax technology left humanity vulnerable, insisting on developing independent solutions. Others accused the aliens of withholding crucial information, pointing to inconsistencies in their explanations about the Voidborn's origins. Public opinion mirrored these divisions, with protests erupting in cities across the globe. Trust eroded quickly, replaced by suspicion and fear. Caught in the middle, Ethan struggled to maintain unity. He held meetings with world leaders, pleading for cooperation despite mounting tensions. "We're stronger together," he insisted during one such gathering. "If we turn on each other now, we're playing right into the Voidborn's hands." His words resonated with some, but not all. A faction of hardline nationalists broke away, forming rogue militias determined to take matters into their own hands. Armed with stolen Vorthax weapons, they launched unauthorized attacks on suspected Voidborn entry points, causing widespread destruction and escalating hostilities. As chaos unfolded on Earth, the Vorthax faced challenges of their own. Their fleet, already stretched thin after centuries of fleeing the Voidborn, showed signs of strain. Supplies dwindled, and morale plummeted among the alien crew members. Ethan witnessed this firsthand during one of his communication sessions with the Vorthax commander, whose elongated form shimmered faintly in the holographic projection. "Our people are weary," the commander admitted, its voice heavy with resignation. "We have fought for generations, always running, never resting. Your world offers hope, but hope alone cannot sustain us." Ethan swallowed hard, guilt twisting in his chest. "I know," he said quietly, "and I promise we'll find a way to help. But you need to trust us too." The commander studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Trust is a rare commodity in times like these, yet without it we are lost." That night Ethan returned home exhausted, his body aching from lack of sleep. Sitting on the roof where he used to gaze at the stars, he stared up at the looming ships hovering silently above. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of what lay ahead. The orb's warning echoed in his mind, preparing for the worst, making sacrifices, facing the unknown. He knew deep down that the road to victory wouldn't come without loss, and though the thought terrified him, he also understood that sometimes the greatest acts of courage came not from seeking glory, but from embracing responsibility. Little did Ethan realize, however, that the hardest choices were yet to come. As the Voidborn grew bolder, testing the limits of the barrier with relentless ferocity, humanity teetered on the brink of collapse. The question loomed larger than ever. How far was Ethan willing to go to protect the planet and the stars beyond? The calm before the storm lasted only a few days. Then, without warning, the Voidborn breached the dimensional barrier. It began with a low rumble that shook the ground beneath Pine Ridge. Windows rattled, and car alarms blared as cracks of light spread across the sky like spiderwebs. The rift, once stable and contained, started to fracture under the relentless assault of the Voidborn. From beyond, the tear came swarms of insectoid drones, their jagged bodies glinting menacingly in the sunlight. They descended upon Earth with terrifying speed, targeting cities, military bases, and power grids. Chaos erupted instantly. Panic swept through streets as people fled in every direction, desperate to escape the onslaught. Buildings crumbled under the Voidborn's attacks, reduced to smoldering ruins within seconds. Fires raged unchecked, choking the air with thick black smoke. The skies turned dark as ash and debris blocked out the sun, casting the world into an eerie twilight. Humanity's worst fears had come true. An alien invasion was underway, and there seemed to be no way to stop it. Ethan Parker watched the destruction unfold from a command center hastily set up near Pine Ridge. Screens lined, the walls displaying live footage of battles raging across the globe. Military forces fought valiantly, using modified Vorthax weapons to repel the invaders. But the Voidborn were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. Each wave of drones overwhelmed defenses, pushing deeper into human territory with horrifying efficiency. We're losing. Someone muttered in the room, their voice trembling with despair. We can't hold them off forever. Ethan clenched his fists, forcing himself to stay focused. He couldn't afford to break down now, not when so much depended on him. Around him, scientists and strategists worked frantically, analyzing data and devising new tactics to counter the Voidborn threat. But every plan felt inadequate against such overwhelming odds. Then, amidst the chaos, Ethan remembered something. The blueprints left behind by the orb. Buried deep in his mind were designs for a superweapon capable of collapsing the rift entirely. If activated, it would seal off the Voidborn permanently, trapping them on their side of the dimensional barrier. However, there was one catch. Someone would have to manually trigger the mechanism from inside the collapsing field. Once initiated, there would be no escape. Ethan stared at the holographic projection of the weapon's schematics, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew what he had to do. There was no other choice. Taking a deep breath, he approached Dr. Maria Alvarez, who was overseeing the final stages of the weapon's construction. Dr. Alvarez, he said quietly, I need you to finalize the weapon. I'm going to activate it. Her eyes widened, in shock. Ethan, are you insane? That's a suicide mission. I don't see any other option, he replied firmly. If we don't seal the rift now, the Voidborn will consume everything. We'll lose Earth, and the Vorthax too. Before she could argue further, Ethan turned away, his resolve hardened. Over the next few hours, he coordinated with both human and Vorthax forces to prepare for the operation. The weapon, a massive device resembling a fusion reactor, was loaded onto a repurposed fighter craft designed for high-speed travel. Equipped with advanced shielding provided by the Vorthax, the ship stood as humanity's last hope. As preparations neared completion, Ethan made one final communication attempt with the Vorthax commander. Through the translator, he explained his plan and asked for assistance in holding off the Voidborn long enough to reach the activation point. The commander hesitated, clearly torn between duty to his people and gratitude toward Ethan. You understand the cost of this action? The Vorthax leader asked solemnly. Yes, Ethan replied without hesitation. But if it means saving both our worlds, then it's worth it. After a long pause, the commander nodded. You have our support. May your courage inspire us all. With the alliance solidified, Ethan suited up in a flight uniform tailored specifically for the mission. As he climbed into the cockpit of the fighter craft, he glanced back at the crowd gathered outside the hangar. Among them were his parents, tears streaming down their faces as they realized the magnitude of what their son was about to do. For the first time, there was no ridicule, no dismissal, only pride and love shining in their eyes. Take care of each other, Ethan whispered over the comm system, addressing everyone present. And remember, the stars aren't just lights in the sky. They're possibilities waiting to be discovered. With those words, the engines roared to life, and the ship shot into the heavens, leaving behind trails of fire and smoke. Below, humanity rallied together, determined to give Ethan the time he needed to succeed. The journey to the rift's core was anything but smooth. Voidborn drones swarmed around the ship, firing beams of energy that rocked the vessel violently. Ethan maneuvered skillfully, dodging attacks while maintaining speed. Warning lights flashed inside the cockpit as shields absorbed hit after hit, but he refused to falter. Every second counted. As he approached the activation zone, memories flooded his mind. Childhood nights spent stargazing, classmates mocking him for his dreams, the moment he touched the orb and saw visions of ships and symbols. Tears blurred his vision as he whispered softly, I told you so. Finally, Ethan reached the designated coordinates. Activating the weapon required aligning its core with the collapsing field, a process that took several agonizing minutes. Outside, the Voidborn closed in, sensing the impending collapse. Explosions rocked the area as human and Vorthax forces fought fiercely to hold them back. With a final push, Ethan initiated the sequence. The weapon hummed to life, emitting a brilliant pulse of light that rippled outward. The rift began to shrink, rapidly, pulling the Voidborn back into the void. One by one, their drones disintegrated, consumed by the implosion. Inside the cockpit, Ethan braced himself for the inevitable. As the field collapsed completely, the ship was engulfed in a blinding flash of energy. Silence followed, a deafening stillness that settled over Earth like a heavy blanket. When the dust cleared, survivors emerged cautiously from bunkers and shelters, staring at the now clear sky. The rift was gone, along with the Voidborn and the Vorthax fleet. News of Ethan's sacrifice spread quickly, transforming him into a legend overnight. Statues were erected in his honor, schools renamed after him, and stories told for generations to come. Though grief lingered, humanity found solace in unity. Inspired by Ethan's bravery, nations collaborated on rebuilding efforts, prioritizing peace and progress over division and greed. Hidden artifacts left behind by the Vorthax hinted at future encounters beyond the stars, reminding everyone that the universe held mysteries yet to be uncovered. And somewhere, amidst the infinite expanse of space, Ethan Parker's name echoed softly, a testament to the boy who dared to believe in worlds beyond our own. The days following Ethan Parker's sacrifice were marked by a profound silence, a stark contrast to the chaos that had preceded it. The skies above Earth, once filled with the hum of alien ships and the roar of destruction, now stretched endlessly, clear, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. For the first time in weeks, people stepped outside without fear, gazing upward at a horizon free of rifts or invaders. Yet beneath the calm exterior lay a collective grief so deep it seemed to weigh down the very air. In Pine Ridge, life slowly began to return to normal, or at least as close to normal as possible after such an unimaginable event. Streets that had been deserted during the battle were now bustling again, though the scars of war remained visible. Crumbled buildings stood as somber reminders of the devastation, while makeshift memorials dotted parks and town squares. Flowers, candles, and handwritten notes adorned these sites, each one bearing messages of gratitude for the boy who had saved humanity. Ethan's name became synonymous with courage and selflessness. News outlets ran countless stories about his life, how he had been bullied for his love of stars, how he had built a translator from scraps in his garage, how he had stood face to face with aliens when no one else dared. Schools across the globe renamed auditoriums and science labs in his honor, ensuring that future generations would remember the teenager who had given everything to protect them. Statues of Ethan were erected in major cities, depicting him gazing skyward, a telescope slung over his shoulder and determination etched into his expression. But perhaps the most powerful tribute came not in monuments or headlines, but in the way people began to treat one another. Inspired by Ethan's example, communities around the world embraced unity and cooperation. Nations that had once argued over resources worked together to rebuild what had been lost. Scientists shared discoveries, openly, driven by a newfound sense of purpose. Even those who had doubted the Vorthax alliance mourned their departure, recognizing the sacrifices they had made alongside humanity. For Dr. Maria Alvarez, Ethan's mentor and closest confidant during the crisis, the aftermath was bittersweet. She spent long hours poring over data collected during the final battle, searching for any trace of the Vorthax fleet or clues about their fate beyond the collapsed rift. Though she found nothing definitive, she couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan's actions hadn't been in vain, that somewhere out there, the Vorthax continued their fight against the Voidborn, carrying with them the hope Ethan had ignited. Dr. Alvarez also took it upon herself to preserve Ethan's legacy. With permission from his parents, she compiled his sketches, notes, and recordings into a comprehensive archive. These documents served as both a historical record and a guide for future explorers, offering insights into alien technology and interstellar diplomacy. The archive quickly became a cornerstone of global education initiatives, inspiring young minds to look beyond Earth's borders and dream of possibilities among the stars. Meanwhile, Ethan's parents struggled to come to terms with their loss. They transformed their grief into action, founding the Ethan Parker Foundation to support children interested in science, astronomy, and innovation. Scholarships funded by the foundation allowed students from all walks of life to pursue their passions, regardless of financial barriers. Every year on the anniversary of Ethan's sacrifice, the foundation hosted a stargazing event in Pine Ridge, inviting families to gather under the night sky and share stories of hope and resilience. As months turned into years, whispers of Ethan's influence spread far beyond his hometown. Conspiracy theorists debated whether the orb he had encountered was truly alien or something more mysterious, a fragment of a greater cosmic force. Others claimed to have seen strange lights in the sky, sparking renewed interest in unidentified flying objects. While skeptics dismissed these accounts as baseless speculation, many couldn't help but wonder if Earth's brush with extraterrestrial life had awakened something dormant within humanity's collective consciousness. One evening, several years after the rift's collapse, a young girl named Mia sat on the roof of her house in Pine Ridge, staring through a telescope much like Ethan had done years before. Her notebook was filled with sketches of constellations and diagrams of imagined spacecraft, inspired by the stories she had grown up hearing. As she adjusted the lens, focusing on a distant cluster of stars, she noticed something unusual, a faint glow pulsating near the edge of her field of view. Mia froze, unsure whether to be excited or afraid. Slowly, she climbed down from the roof and ran inside to grab her flashlight. Following the direction of the light, she ventured into the woods, heart pounding with anticipation. In a clearing eerily similar to the one where Ethan had met the orb, she found herself face to face with a glowing object hovering silently above the ground. The orb shimmered with hues of blue, green, and gold, just as Ethan had described. It extended a tendril of light toward her, brushing gently against her forehead. Images flooded her mind, blueprints, symbols, warnings. Words formed in her thoughts, clear yet unspoken. You are chosen. Prepare. Back in Pine Ridge, life went on as usual. Neighbors greeted each other warmly, shopkeepers opened their stores, and children played outside until the sun dipped below the horizon. No one suspected that high above them, forces beyond their understanding were already gathering once more. The stars, once silent witnesses to human existence, were calling out again, this time to a new generation ready to answer. Though Ethan Parker was gone, his legacy endured, not just as a symbol of bravery but as a reminder of humanity's potential. His story proved that even in the darkest moments, ordinary individuals could rise to extraordinary heights. And as long as people dared to dream of worlds beyond their own, Ethan's spirit would continue to shine brightly, guiding humanity toward a future among the stars.